Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to Apply. All right, today I have Seiler Tucker on the line, and she's founder and CEO over at Seiler Tucker Inc. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right, Michelle. So I'm excited to get into today's topic. So we will be talking about, how to build a sustainable, scalable, and sellable business. And I think heading Seiler Tucker, you have just a really unique vantage point with how many businesses you've worked with and also how many investors you've worked with in general. I guess maybe just to kick it off, we should probably start at the beginning. So why is it so important from your vantage point to plan your exit strategy from day one, specifically using the STGPS exit model?
Sure. So according to Steve Forbes, 8 out of 10 businesses will not sell. That's 80% of companies not selling. And the number one reason businesses don't sell is because business owners never think about their exit until a catastrophic event has occurred, whether that's internal or external. Internal meaning health issues, partner disputes, divorce, death. External meaning the pandemic that we're in. That's the worst time to think about selling your business because your business is typically trending downward, not doing as well. The best time to sell is when your business is booming. So I always tell my clients, start with the end in mind. Plan your exit from day one of buying or starting a business and follow the STGPS exit model. So when you want to drive somewhere, what do? You plug in Google Maps, right? You take out your Google Maps on your phone, right, Adam? And you go to Google Maps. You plug in your destination. Number one, you need to know where you're going, where you're driving to. Otherwise, you're going to drive around in circles. And that's what happens to business owners. They don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So they're driving around in circles, driving up and down the financial hills, ending up nowhere because they don't have an end game. They don't have a destination. They don't have a desired sales price. So everyone needs to figure out what's that number. Just pick a number. Let's say you want to sell for $20 million. Great. Now we have a start of a plan. So $20 million. Now what does a GPS exit model need to know? Needs to know where you're starting from, what's your current location, what's your valuation. So let's say most business owners, I don't know if you know this, Adam, but most business owners do not get a business evaluation. They don't think about a business evaluation. And, we go to doctors to get annual health checkup to make sure our bodies are in good shape. Why not make sure your most valuable asset, your business, is in good shape? So you really should get a business evaluation checkup every single year. Best place to get that is not a CPA. It's a financial mergers and acquisitions expert. And get that checkup because there's events that can increase valuation. There are events that can decrease valuation, like the pandemic that we're in. So you need to know what your business is worth every single year. So let's say you're worth $5 million. You want to sell for $20 million, you're worth $5 million. Now you need to determine time frame. Let's say you want to do this in 10 years. Great. 10 years. Now what do you need to know? You need to know who your buyers are going to be. There's 5 different types of buyers. You notice I say buyers, not buyer, because in all likelihood that one buyer will fall apart. So you need backup buyers, number one. Number two, you want to create competition. So you want to create competition so you get the highest price. You can't create competition if you only have one buyer. But there's 5 types of buyers. So your buyers, let me tell you who buyers are not going to be. It's not going to be a first-time buyer because they're not going to buy a $20 million company. 90% of buyers are first-time buyers, and they buy small businesses. Then you have turnaround specialists. They're not going to buy your company because they buy distressed assets. So it's probably going to be a PEG, which is a private equity group, a strategic/competitor, and by the way, they pay the highest multiple of EBITDA because they're buying synergies, or a sophisticated entrepreneur who is industry agnostic but chases cash flow. They chase cash flow. So then you got to determine, okay, well, now, I know my 3 buyers. I know I want to sell for $20 million. I'm worth $5 million today, and I want to do this in 10 years. So what's the next thing you need to know? You need to know, well, what are the financials? Where do the financials need to be to sell for $20 million? Where does the gross revenue have to be, gross profit margins, and most importantly, where does the EBITDA have to end up at? So if you want to sell for $20 million, you need to have an EBITDA of at least $3 to $5 million. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And then you need to know, well, what synergies are they looking for? What are the characteristics that will have a buyer, cause a buyer to pay top dollar for my business? And then build upon those synergies, build upon those characteristics, and build to meet those buyers' specific criteria. And then the last step is know your why. Why do you want to sell for $20 million? Because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So you need a powerful why to keep you in the game, to keep you weathering the financial storms. That's the STGPS exit model.
Man, I love it. And I'll tell you what, just looking at the way you've set it up and what you've done in your business, I mean, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense. And I think a lot of business owners, exactly what you said, when they're planning it, when they're doing things in the beginning, they're not thinking about the exit or even the potential for that. And I know that's not, I don't know if it's intentional. It's not necessarily intentional. Like, I always tell people, I'm like, nobody intentionally goes out and says, I want to make these mistakes. It's just something that maybe happens because of lack of knowledge or something else. Speaking of mistakes, what are some of those, the big, and I know this will change, by the way, from business owner to business owner, obviously, from level of, experience as an entrepreneur, but I know that certain themes tend to arise, like, over and over again. What are some of those big mistakes that you see business owners make?
Right. So the business owner, the mistakes are pretty much the same, believe it or not. Of course, smaller businesses will make more mistakes than owners of bigger businesses because owners of bigger businesses have figured a lot of this stuff out. So I like to take the biggest mistakes owners make by taking you through the 6 Ps because I can do both at once. So the number 1 mistake is not planning your exit from the beginning. That's why 80% of businesses don't sell. The number 2 mistake is creating what I call a glorified job in which business owners go to work at every day versus the business actually works for them. So therefore, the very first P is people. You don't build a business, you build people, and people build a business. So entrepreneurs
need to focus. Say that one again. That one's big. That one's big, Michelle. You said you don't build. Say that one more time. That's a.
You don't build a business.
Hit me in the stomach with that one.
You don't build a business. You build people, and people build a business.
Wow, that's so powerful. Go ahead. I just had to have you say it again. It's just so good.
And then entrepreneurs, they're control freaks, so they want to do everything. You can't do everything. You need to focus on your strengths, hire your weaknesses, make sure you have the right people in the right position, the right seat, and then most importantly, ask the who question. Who handles customers? Who handles marketing? Who handles legal? Who handles manufacturing, distribution, logistics, environmental, etc. The clue here, Adam, is that you should never be next to the who. You need to build a business that runs without you. And so the next P, I'm going to go through these rather quickly because I know we're, short on time. The next P is products. You got to ask yourself, your product, your industry, your service, is it on the way up or is it on the way out? Thriving or dying? Do you have an Amazon or do you have a Blockbuster? Most business owners have what I call a Blockbuster, especially now because of the pandemic. So if you're in a dying industry and you're not diversified, it doesn't mean that you just pack up and go home and crawl under your bed into a fetal position. What that means is you got to align yourself with an outside expert and mentor, somebody who's been down your road before, and ask these transformational questions. Amazon did this back in the 90s. Amazon asked themselves, what business are we in? That's number 1. They said, well, we sell books. We're in a book selling business. Number 2, what do we do really well, better than anyone else? We do fulfillment better than anyone else. Number 3, what business should we be in? And that's when Amazon, said, oh, my gosh, we should be in a fulfillment business. We should be selling everybody's products, not just books. So those 3 questions transformed Amazon into the small, bookseller to the multi-billion-dollar worldwide conglomerate that they are today. So you got to pivot. And the way to pivot is really get out of the transactional and become transformational. Make sense?
No, it's awesome. Yes.
And then number 3 is processes. A lot of business owners make the mistake of not having efficient, productive processes and not designing their processes with the customer experience in mind. They don't think about processes kind of like they don't think about exit strategy until something bad has happened in their company. And then they're like, oh, my gosh, we need a process for that. It's a little late now. So you really need to design your processes from the beginning with the customer experience in mind. And McDonald's did this back in the 40s. They said, we want to create a fast food restaurant around our customer experience. The customer experience is to get great tasting food that's hot fast. So you can eat at McDonald's anywhere in the world and get the same experience. They never said it's going to be healthy for you. They never said it's going to be organic, right? So many companies do the opposite. I'm sure you've dealt with companies where you're like, oh, my gosh, this is the worst customer service ever. Or I have to, push the phone 12 different times to get a live human on the phone. Well, that's because their processes are designed based upon their own agenda, not based upon the customer experience. So make sure you design your processes around the customer experience, make sure they're productive, they're efficient, and make sure that they're well documented with policy and procedure manuals, protocols, SOP checklists, employee handbooks, non-competes, etc. You need all this documentation. The first thing a buyer's going to do is walk in and want to see this during due diligence. All right, the 4P is the biggest value driver. So this P can take you from a 4 multiple to maybe a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or even a 10. These are proprietary assets. Proprietary is the highest value driver there is, obviously, in all the Ps. So there's 6 pillars to proprietary. I'll try to move through them really quick because the other 2 Ps are it's not going to take as much time. So number 1 is branding. The more well-branded you are, the more I can sell your business for. But you can't just brand your personal brand. You have to brand your company brand as well. Think about it. What's the biggest brand in the world? What's the most valuable brand in the world?
Apple.
Apple. Nobody ever gets that right. You got it right. Yay. So Apple is like one of the biggest brands in the world. Apple's worth $249 billion just for the brand, not including assets, real estate, inventory, accounts receivables, cash flow, anything. Just the brand is worth $249 billion. So as long as your brand is relevant in the mind of consumers, we can sell it for a lot of money. But, nobody's paying for Blockbuster, so the brand has to be relevant. Trademarks are huge. Got to make sure you have a company trademarks, slogans, your logo, your podcast, everything that's unique, your USP, your unique selling proposition should be trademarked. The biggest mistake the business owners make, they go get a state trademark for the state that they're operating in. They never check the federal database, and all of a sudden, within a few years, they could receive a cease and desist letter, and they have to stop using that company name. So spend the $1,500 to $2,000, get your name federally trademarked so you don't have this problem down the road because you'd hate to have to rebrand and start all over. And then patents, protect your IP, protect your inventions. If you ever watch Shark Tank, every single investor always asks every single investor, do you have a patent? Do you have a patent pending? Do you have a utility patent? So patents are big. Contracts are really huge. Manufacturing, distribution, vendor, franchisor contracts. Any type of exclusivity, especially client contracts. Client contracts are the most valuable of all contracts because, especially if they have a recurring revenue stream or subscription model, because buyers want to buy a business that has money flowing in. Here's the biggest mistake business owners make when it comes to contracts. They don't have the 2-sentence transferability clause. 99.9% of all sales are asset sales, not stock sales. If the buyer doesn't agree to a stock sale and your clients won't sign a consent to transfer, then you're going to have a big problem.